The audience at the View had been laughing just seconds earlier until the mood suddenly shifted. No one expected the conversation to turn this tense, especially not between one of Hollywood's biggest stars and the woman hosting the show. And what happened next left the studio completely silent. Quick heads up! Subscribe to Backstory Uncovered, because what starts as a normal conversation here is about to take a turn no one expected. The cameras cut to the stage as Leonardo DiCaprio sat across from Whoopi Goldberg, both smiling politely as the audience applauded. Whoopi leaned forward slightly in her chair. "Leonardo, it's good to finally have you here," she said warmly. "You've been in this business for a long time now. I mean, from Titanic heartthrob to Oscar winner." The audience clapped again, and Leo nodded with a small grin. "Yeah," he said with a laugh. "It's been a ride." Whoopi chuckled. "A long one," she added. "Some might say very long." A few people in the audience laughed, though Leo's smile tightened just a little. Whoopi continued, "You've also become pretty vocal about a lot of issues lately: climate, politics, activism. Some people love it. Some people think actors should just stick to acting." Leo tilted his head slightly. "Well," he said calmly, "I think everyone has a voice. And when you're lucky enough to have a platform, it's kind of your responsibility to use it." The audience clapped lightly. Whoopi nodded slowly. "Sure," she said, "but there's also an argument that people come to movies to escape all that." Leo kept his tone steady. "I get that," he replied, "but the reality is we're living in a time where ignoring problems doesn't make them go away." Whoopi raised an eyebrow. "So you think people are ignoring problems?" Leo paused briefly. "I think sometimes conversations get shut down before they even start." A small murmur rippled through the audience. Whoopi leaned back slightly. "Well, hold on," she said. "People talk about these things every day, but sometimes it feels like celebrities are lecturing the rest of us." Leo gave a soft laugh, though his eyes looked more focused now. "I'm not lecturing anyone," he said. "I'm sharing concern." Whoopi crossed her arms lightly. "But when you say things like, 'the world needs to change,' some folks hear that as you telling them they're doing something wrong." Leo leaned forward a bit. "Because sometimes we are," he said plainly. A few people in the audience reacted with quiet oohs. Whoopi glanced toward them, then back at Leo. "So now the audience is doing something wrong?" she asked. Leo shook his head quickly. "That's not what I said, but that's how it sounds," Whoopi replied. There was a brief pause. The tension in the room suddenly felt very real. Leo rubbed his hands together for a moment before speaking again. "What I'm saying," he explained, "is that we're all part of the same system. And if we don't talk honestly about what's happening, nothing improves." Whoopi leaned forward again, her tone sharper now. "But who decides what honest is?" Leo blinked once, slightly surprised. "Well, facts usually help." The audience gasped softly at the remark. Whoopi's eyebrows shot up. "Facts," she repeated. "Yes," Leo said carefully. "Because people on both sides claim facts," Whoopi replied. "So which facts are we talking about?" Leo exhaled slowly. "The scientific consensus," he answered. Another murmur rolled through the audience. Whoopi shook her head slightly. "You see, this is what I'm talking about," she said. "You say something like that, and suddenly anyone who questions it sounds ignorant." Leo raised his hand slightly. "I didn't say that." "You implied it," Whoopi responded. For the first time, Leo's calm expression cracked just a bit. "No," he said firmly. "I didn't." The studio went quiet. Whoopi studied him for a moment. "So let me ask you something," she continued. "Do you ever worry that constantly talking about these issues turns people away from your work?" Leo paused. "I think people are smart enough to separate an actor from the characters they play." Whoopi tilted her head. "Are they, though?" The question hung in the air. Leo hesitated, then answered carefully. "I believe they are." A man in the audience clapped once, awkwardly. Whoopi smiled slightly. "You've got supporters," she said. Leo chuckled faintly. And critics, he replied. Whoopi leaned back again. That comes with the territory. For a moment it seemed like the conversation might settle down. But then Whoopi asked another question. Let me be direct, she said. Do you ever think celebrities talking about global issues can come across as out of touch? The audience grew quiet again. Leo didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked out at the crowd for a second before turning back to Whoopi. That depends on how it's done, he said. Whoopi pressed further. And how are you doing it? Leo took a breath. I try to base what I say on real information and real experiences. Whoopi's expression hardened slightly. But you're still a billionaire actor flying around the world telling people to reduce their carbon footprint. The audience erupted in mixed reactions. Some laughter, some gasps. Leo blinked slowly. Then he leaned forward. That's a fair criticism, he admitted. Whoopi looked surprised for a split second. But, Leo continued, it doesn't mean the issue itself disappears. The crowd quieted again. Whoopi nodded slowly, though her eyes stayed locked on him. So let me ask you this, she said carefully. Are you here today to promote a movie or to convince people how to think? The room went completely silent. Leo stared at her for a moment, clearly caught off guard. He opened his mouth to respond. But Whoopi suddenly interrupted. Because right now, she said bluntly, it feels like the second one. A wave of whispers spread through the audience. Leo leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. For the first time since the interview began, the easy smile was gone. He looked back at Whoopi, and when he spoke again, his voice was calm, but noticeably firmer. I came here to have a conversation, he said. The audience held its breath. Then let's have one, Whoopi replied. And just like that, the tension between them jumped to a level no one in the studio expected. The tension in the studio didn't ease after that moment. If anything, it only grew thicker. The audience sat quietly as Leonardo DiCaprio and Whoopi Goldberg looked at each other across the table, neither one smiling now. Leo leaned forward again, clasping his hands together. I'm not here to tell people how to think, he said calmly. I'm here because these conversations matter. Whoopi tilted her head slightly. But do you understand why some people feel talked down to? She asked. Leo nodded once. Yes, he admitted. And honestly, that frustration is valid. A few people in the audience murmured. Whoopi raised an eyebrow. Okay, she said slowly. That's interesting. Leo continued. But the frustration shouldn't stop us from talking about real problems. Whoopi leaned forward, her tone sharper. But who decides what the real problems are? Leo paused for a second. Science, he said. A few audience members clapped, but others shifted uncomfortably. Whoopi gestured toward the crowd. You see what just happened, she said. Half the room agrees with you, half the room doesn't. Leo nodded. That's democracy. The audience reacted with a mix of laughter and applause. But Whoopi didn't laugh. No, she said. That's disagreement. Leo leaned back slightly. Those things can exist at the same time. For a brief second, neither spoke. Then Whoopi crossed her arms again. Let me ask you something personal, she said. Leo nodded cautiously. Go ahead. Whoopi looked directly at him. You've spent years speaking about climate change, traveling around the world, giving speeches. She paused. But do you think your message gets lost because of who you are? Leo frowned slightly. What do you mean? You're a Hollywood star, Whoopi said plainly. Private jets, luxury lifestyle, the whole thing. A ripple moved through the audience. And people hear that and think, why should I listen to him? Leo sat silently for a moment. Then he nodded again. I understand that criticism, he said. Whoopi leaned forward. So what do you say to it? Leo exhaled slowly. I say they're right to question people in power. The audience went quiet again. Even me, he added. That line surprised the room. Whoopi studied him carefully. You're okay with people questioning you? Leo shrugged lightly. That's healthy. Whoopi tilted her head. But what if they reject the entire message because of it? Leo looked out toward the audience again. Then he spoke more slowly. Then I'd say the message matters more than the messenger. A man in the front row nodded and clapped. Several others followed. Whoopi waited for the applause to fade. But here's the thing, she said. When celebrities talk about politics or global issues, some viewers feel like they're being judged. Leo shook his head slightly. That's not my intention. But intention and perception are different, Whoopi replied quickly. Leo hesitated. That's true. Another pause. Then Whoopi asked the question that changed the mood again. So let me ask you this, she said. Do you think actors should influence public opinion? Leo raised his eyebrows slightly. I think anyone with knowledge or concern should speak up, even if they're wrong. Whoopi asked. Leo smiled faintly. Everyone's wrong sometimes. A small laugh spread through the audience. But Whoopi didn't let it go. So how do people know when you're right? Leo leaned forward again. They shouldn't trust me blindly. The audience reacted with quiet surprise. They should look at the data, Leo continued. Read the science. Question everything, including what I say. That answer seemed to shift the energy in the room. Even Whoopi paused for a moment. You're telling people not to trust you? She said. Leo laughed softly. I'm telling them to think for themselves. A wave of applause broke out across the audience. Whoopi glanced around the room. Well, she said, that's not something we hear from celebrities very often. Leo smiled for the first time in several minutes. Maybe we should hear it more. The crowd clapped again. The tension that had filled the studio earlier began to loosen slightly. But Whoopi still had one more point. You know, she said, leaning back in her chair. I'll give you this. Leo looked at her. You didn't dodge the questions. Leo chuckled. I tried not to. Whoopi nodded. And I respect that. The audience applauded again. Then Whoopi added with a half smile. But you also stirred up my audience. Leo glanced at the crowd. I think they stirred themselves up, he joked. That earned a louder laugh from the room. Whoopi shook her head. Fair enough. For a moment, the atmosphere finally felt lighter. But then something unexpected happened. A woman in the audience stood up and shouted, Keep speaking out, Leo. The crowd reacted instantly, some cheering, others groaning. Whoopi raised both hands. Okay, she said. Let's not start a town hall meeting in here. The audience laughed. Leo smiled politely toward the woman before turning back to Whoopi. You see, Whoopi said, this is what happens when conversations get heated. Leo nodded. But at least people are talking. The room quieted again as the two looked at each other. Whoopi finally gave a small smile. Well, I'll say this, she said. You definitely woke everybody up today. Leo laughed. That wasn't the plan. But it happened, she replied. The audience applauded once more as the tension finally broke. Whoopi turned toward the camera. Whether you agree with him or not, she said, you can't say Leonardo DiCaprio didn't come here ready for a real conversation. Leo nodded appreciatively. And I appreciate the tough questions, he said. Whoopi smirked. That's what we do. The audience clapped as the segment wrapped up, the earlier confrontation now turning into one of those rare talk show moments people would be discussing long after the cameras stopped rolling. But now we want to hear from you. Do you think Leonardo DiCaprio handled the situation well, or did Whoopi Goldberg make the stronger points? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to Backstory Uncovered for more moments that reveal what really happens behind the scenes of these viral interviews.